how come organizations don't have an anti-workplace bullying policy? Most workplaces don't have them.
Yeah, good
In
point.
describing what it is and being clear about that, because you can't hold someone accountable to a standard that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, on one hand, there's a lack of self-awareness. On another hand, there's a lack of accountability. So those two things combined can cause an incredible amount of pain and suffering in workplaces. And not to mention, a lot of people think this term bullying is what I dealt with as a kid. Bullying
Right.
is someone slams your locker or snaps your bra behind you or whatever. Like, no, like real bullying exists in it exists in workplaces, and the effects are catastrophic. 50 plus million Americans are dealing with workplace bullying as you and I are talking right now. That's more than the population of like 16 US states. And we're just like, okay, well, I guess that's what it means to work in an adult workplace. I say BS. And if we don't do something about this, we have a lot of pain coming towards us in the future.
Hey, Nicole, what do you get when a former corporate CEO and a do-gooding executive walk into a recording studio?
Well, Erin, nothing, because the two of us are usually on my couch or Zoom, because wine.
You get a podcast created for Gen X women who are bought into the corporate world, but fed up with the BS.
I know. It's how to thrive the 9 to 5 or 6 or 7.
It's career therapy. It's comedy. It's definitely full-on authenticity. Basically, we give you tangible strategies to rise in your career without compromising everything else.
Because work doesn't have to suck. Hi, my friend, coming to you with another interview to talk about something I know we all struggle with or have struggled with, this concept of toxic workplaces and workplace bullying, and quite frankly, just a world that feels like a dumpster fire and not knowing what to do, how to handle it. And I have the perfect guest to help you do that. His name is Shola Richards. His nickname is Brother Teresa. He is one of the most calming, funny, authentic, brilliant humans I've ever encountered in my life. And he's going to come on today to talk about how to handle those situations, how to bring kindness into a world, and also sometimes when kindness isn't necessary, there's other things you need to do. Shola is incredible. He's the best-selling and award-winning author of 2 books, How to Make Work Work and Civil Unity. He's been on the Today Show, CBS. He's a global keynote speaker. He's a total badass. And he was broken, very broken early in his career, earlier in his life after being bullied, and then in his personal life, and then into the workplace, heading into a very toxic place where he took very extreme measures. And luckily, those extreme measures didn't work out, but that was for the best. And he shares his vulnerable past, but he also shares his optimism for the future and what you can do. He talks about a 3-step framework, for example, for handling workplace bullying. Well, the simple things you need to do if you feel like you are being bullied. And I will tell you, and I shared it, I was bullied at work myself. I had a file on someone. He also talks about, why kill them with kindness. That is sort of an outdated advice and what to do instead. And also a simple shift that can transform the energy on your team and the people around you. And so if you are feeling like your world is less than kind right now, maybe it's within your quote unquote 4 walls of work, or it's at home, or it's this government and the fiascos that we're dealing with on a worldwide stage. Shola will bring so much light and energy, but also tactical tips and strategies to make your world a better place and you a better person. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Shola Richards. Here's where I want to start with this whole thing, because we haven't even talked about this. I want to start, and then I'll probably march us a little bit backwards. You testified in front of Congress, in front of the House in 2021.
Yeah.
On the topic of how to bring more kindness to politics and the government, which, I mean, I love you and I adore you and I believe in your work, but clearly there's still work to do, as my son used to say. But
there's some work to be done. Well, first of all, it's so interesting because let's go back in time. It was September 2021. Pandemic was raging. And during this time that there was this committee, and I want to get the name correct. It was like the Committee for the Modernization of Congress. I want to think it was exactly what it was called. So at the time, the Democrats were in control of the House, and the party affiliation doesn't matter. But the reason why I'm sharing that is because the Democrats made a very interesting decision to be like, listen, we want to have this committee be completely bipartisan, meaning 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans, not like, because if we have control, they could add one more to make it 7 and 6 or whatever, but they didn't. And they want to make it completely bipartisan. And it was fascinating because both groups, the Republicans and the Democrats, in this particular committee, they were like, look, we're all in agreement. This is a dumpster fire. This is not working. We need to do something about this. And it was so cool to see people from both sides of the aisles, even though ideologically they were not aligned on a lot of things, but they were aligned on like, look, we should be able to disagree without demonizing one another. Erin, I'm telling you, it was one of the most fascinating moments I've ever spent in my life. And the reason why is they both wanted the same thing. They wanted to be able to debate on ideas, not having these weird moments where they're getting gotcha questions or stupid stuff that they're going to be parroting on their favorite cable news station. They just wanted people to do the work and to represent their constituents in a mature, thoughtful way. So these 12 people got in the room, and there were 3 of us, right? So there was a leadership expert, there was a teamwork expert, and then me as the civility expert. And we were in there and we were just talking about how can we make this work? How can we find some real suggestions that are going to make this move better? And it's so funny because there's so many things that came up. One of the people said, well, you know what? What we should do is we should invite school-age children to watch your committee hearings. I was because, no one's going to act up if little kids are in the room, right? There's that. I suggested, well, stop televising these things. You have them on C-SPAN. So if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Like, it's the same idea. Like, if you can't get that gotcha moment recorded, then there's going to be less of a desire or a motive to try to do this stuff. So we're sharing all these ideas. They came up with this beautiful document. Unfortunately, though, when the House flipped, one of the first things they did was get rid of this committee. And then it was gone. It was sad. It was really sad because the work that we're doing is so important. But long story short, to answer this question really succinctly, there is hope. I know what we see on the cable news stations, the biggest loudmouths screaming, whatever. But I would say the overwhelming majority are mature, thoughtful people who just want to do well by their constituents on both sides of the aisle. And I think that's good to remember. And that's what gave me hope when I was there.
That's incredible. I love that. I love that you have taken, obviously, a sort of, as I call it, like a unicorn, fluffy unicorn doo-doo kind of topic, like authenticity. You've taken this concept of kindness and you've made it, tangible and actionable. I think that's such a great example. But I want to go back, obviously there's a lot of passion behind what you do and there's a root to it. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes you kind of ridiculously obsessed with this concept of kindness?
Ridiculously obsessed is the perfect way to describe it, by the way. Yeah, gosh, where to begin? So I'll try to keep it tight. But when I was younger, really younger, I was bullied a lot for a kid. As a kid, I had jacked up teeth that wouldn't stay straight. My God, straight now.
Looking good.
Looking good. No, but I had braces. You never know, right? Braces as a kid, then again as an adult. And I also had a speech impediment. So I was an easy target for the bullies. I stuttered a lot. And so with the stutter and the bad teeth, I was just getting bullied and teased. People would take my backpack and throw it over the ledge at school. It was awful. And I'm also what's called an HSP, which stands for a highly sensitive person. So I feel things very deeply. So as a kid, and I didn't understand the difference between nice and kind. So I was like, at the time, I was like, why aren't people nicer to me? Why can't people just be nicer? Why can't people just be nicer? And I asked this question for decades, okay? Literally for 20 years. Like, why can't people be nicer? Because when someone was mean to me, I felt it so deeply in my soul. Most people could just be like, the jerk, or this guy's just an idiot. For me, it's like, why would you treat me this way? When I see people experiencing homelessness, I just feel this like horrible pain for them. I just can't step over them and go about my day. Well, fast forward, this guy who's been kind of dealing with bullying and meanness or just seeing it in the world for a while, ended up working in a really toxic work environment. And it was really bad. And I just got to a point where I was like, my capacity for accepting unkindness was full. Like I was done. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. And since this is one of my first jobs out of college, relatively speaking, I was like, dude, I can't do another 30, 40 years of this. There's no chance. I can't do it. So what I didn't realize at the time is that I fell into a very deep depression. And that's something that I now know is something that runs in my family and I'm aware of because I currently deal with clinical depression. And I didn't understand this at the time, but it was so bad. And I was like, I'm done. And I wasn't saying I was done with the job. I was saying that I just was done with this earthly experience. And I decided that I was going to take my own life. And it's so hard to talk about this because I talk about this on stage. You know this, Erin. I talk about this stuff, but it's like there's a book behind me. I'm sure you've heard of it before, called Your Body Keeps the Score. And so it's a very powerful book if you haven't heard of it before. But long story short, as I share this, I always feel it in my body when I talk about it. So anyway, I live in LA, Los Angeles, as you know, and while driving down the 405 freeway in Los Angeles, tried to drive my car off the overpass in an attempt to make it look like an accident. And for reasons I'm not quite clear on, but super grateful for, the guardrail held. I came back in incoming traffic, and I spent the better part of the past 20 plus years at this point, not only trying to unpack what happened in that moment, but I really wanted to make a decision that no one in this beautiful country of ours or anywhere in the world really should have to deal with that type of toxicity in the workplace ever again. So that's why I'm ridiculously passionate about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that. And I think it's important to understand that, everything happens for a reason. And also that even though you do share this because you're a public figure all the time, that it's still hard. So I appreciate you sharing that. This toxic workplace, one of the things that I've always struggled with, because I was there, right?
Yeah.
And some of it was not that toxic, but some, of course, it's all a
Relative.
scale.
Mhm.
Is it individually, just like you said about Congress, nobody goes in and says, I want to be a jerk, whether
Nope.
they're a leader, I don't want to be an asshole leader, like I don't want to be like that person. Everybody's intentions are a large portion. What do you think it is that, sort of tips things towards toxicity or bullying? What do you think it is?
Oh my God, there's so many different things. We can look at it from multiple angles, right? So one angle, from an individual perspective, I think it's a lack of self-awareness. I've never in my life met a workplace bully who ever admitted to being one, right? They don't believe that's them. It's like, I'm yelling at you because I care about the patients in the bed. That's why I'm yelling at you. And it's like, damn. So that's their answer? Like, that's how we're going to do this? So unfortunately, if it becomes that type of party where people are spilling their unhealed wounds onto others, it's unfortunate. And the second problem with this, besides the self-awareness, is more organizational. There's a lack of accountability for these type of behaviors.
Yeah.
And this is what's so frustrating for me. My TED talk that I did was on the spirit of Ubuntu. My favorite word is an African word. I am because we are, and the height of human kindness and human connectedness. But the point of that talk was the kind of Trojan horse in an idea that I really want to be my idea worth sharing. How come organizations don't have an anti-workplace bullying policy? Most workplaces don't have them.
Yeah. Good
In
point.
describing what it is and being clear about that, because you can't hold someone accountable to a standard that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, on one hand, there's a lack of self-awareness. On another hand, there's a lack of accountability. So those two things combined can cause an incredible amount of pain and suffering in workplaces. And not to mention, a lot of people think this term bullying is what I dealt with as a kid.
Right.
Bullying is someone slams your locker or snaps your bra behind you or whatever. Like, no, like real bullying exists in it exists in workplaces, and the effects are catastrophic. 50 plus million Americans are dealing with workplace bullying as you and I are talking right now. That's more than the population of like 16 US states. And we're just like, okay, well, I guess that's what it means to work in an adult workplace. I say BS. And if we don't do something about this, we have a lot of pain coming towards us in the future.
How do you tell the difference between, I know you have things around the signs, like how do you tell the difference between, okay, somebody's having a bad day as a leader, or they're a little bit of a jerk, or you're being bullied?
Yeah, the difference is one word: pattern. You got to be able to see. I mean, look, we all have bad days, right? I mean, no one's going to be their best self always. You could be under caffeinated. You could be sick, like my kid currently is. You can have all sorts of different things going on. And, if it's a one-off and you're just like snappy or just in a terrible mood, that's one thing. But workplace bullying is something different. It's the repeated behaviors that happen that undermine, humiliate, intimidate, or harm an employee, repeated and unreasonable. So when you think about the definition of workplace
Mhm.
bullying, it's repeated and unreasonable. So you can do something as a one-off. And because if you were to go to HR, human resources, and complain about workplace bullying, if you don't have an established pattern that you bring to the table, then what you're describing is someone having a bad day. It's
Yeah.
not cool. Don't get me wrong. It's not cool, but it's harder to be able to hold it down when you don't have a real pattern of behavior established. So that's the main difference. One-offs versus patterns.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And when I was going through your stuff, I definitely had a bully, and I know because I kept a folder.
Good.
I kept a folder because it was so repetitive and so ongoing. But tell our audience, okay, so what can you do? I mean, you sort of mentioned HR if there's a pattern, but
Mm.
it's probably got to be like the last step. Nobody wants to go tell on somebody. Like, how do you fight back? How do you change them? How do you what steps can I take?
I will absolutely answer this question. Can I ask you a question though? Because I'm super curious. What made you get to do the folder? What was the thing that made you decide, I got to keep track of this?
So the situation was that it was my predecessor. I had taken over her leadership role.
Oh boy.
She moved to another department, but it was not a department that was fully removed. And there was sort of this passive aggressive pattern that continued. Like I wasn't doing my job because she was going to have to do it, but I was doing the job differently because I'm Erin. You know how I am. And
Exactly.
we were polar opposites, right? She was very analytical, very numbers. I'm even though I was a math major, I'm all about sort of influencing in a unique way and telling a story, and sort of started doing a roadshow in a different way. But I think it was, it was a pattern of just, I think it was the way I felt that I just kept coming back to. If I was having a bad day, it was because of that person on a
Mm,
regular basis, not because, I messed up a report or we lost a customer. It was like so many of the bad days and the anxiety I was having, it kept coming back to, these emails, these conversations, these comments.
I'm glad you shared that because it's so interesting. Reason I know, absolutely go back to your question that you asked me originally. The reason why I was asking is because I'm always wondering, what is it that makes the person realize, oh, something's not right here,
Yeah.
right? Something's off, because you wouldn't have thought to do that if you thought that things were cool or normal or this is the way things have to be. So you caught something and it happened. So my answer to your original question, like, what do you do if you're in the situation? There's 3 steps, and all 3 of them are important in their own different way.
Mm.
So the first one is we kind of alluded to it earlier. Call it what it is. You have to be
Mm.
clear about this. Now, this seems so tough. You're such a high performer, Aaron. So people like you, and I like to put myself in that category if you don't mind now and then, but
I'm pretty sure you are.
but people like you who are very high performers, it's very interesting. We're also often responsible or feel responsible for what happens to us. So we're not the type to make excuses or to blame others. We're just going to look within, like, oh God, I should have done better, or should have thick skin, or should have been like,
Yeah.
stronger in the situation. It goes back to repeated and unreasonable behaviors. It's like if someone's yelling and cursing at you, if someone is undermining your work, spreading rumors about you, um, finding ways to take work away from you to make you feel useless. Like there's so many
Mm.
different ways to
Mm.
do this.
Yeah, that's a good
If it
one.
happens over and over and over and over again, then this is not just a one-off. This is a pattern. And we got to stop calling it something else. Like, I'm not strong enough to be dealing with this, or God, I'm just so thin skinned. None of that is true. You are being bullied. And the sooner you can come to that realization, you can go to the next 2 steps. We can't get to the next 2 steps if you don't lock in the first one. And a lot of people don't do that. So I'm big on that. So first of all, be very clear about that. The second step, which is incredibly important, but is super risky as well,
Mm.
is you also have to find some help. And I mean by help,
Mm.
getting your allies, getting your team. So most bullies thrive by putting the target in isolation. This is what they do.
Mm.
So instead of like, very rarely they bully people in a group because they don't want to feel outnumbered,
Right.
and they want to have plausible deniability if it's just your word versus theirs, right? So they're going to find a way to isolate you. However, one thing that work in our favor is that a lot of bullies don't have a lot of emotional regulation skills. So oftentimes when they want to bully someone, they can't stop themselves from doing it because that's who they are. They just can't do it. They can't help themselves. So maybe they say something in a team meeting or they do something dumb. If you have a friend or a colleague who has also witnessed the bullying or are been targeted themselves, there is strength in numbers. And I cannot say this enough. Sure, bring your case, which I'll get to in the third step. But the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have people who have seen it, who feel the same way that you do, and who you can go, hey, listen, God, I'm making someone's name. Like Jill has been awful. She's been terrible. And I don't know if you've seen the behavior, but have you dealt with anything like that before? Now, here's the key thing. You've got to be careful because there's some particularly spineless, cowardly individuals who will quickly run your information back to the bully in order to gain favor with him or her.
Yeah.
So that's a question. You got to be really careful about who you share this with. And also with the whole building your allies thing, it doesn't have to be coworkers. It could be your therapist, it could be a family member. It could be someone who is willing to maybe help you see this in a different light or give you some suggestions because they're not in the situation like you are. You want to have a team that can help you support you through this, but also give you some tools to be able to navigate your way through this. And the third step, and the final one, and maybe most important, you got to build your case. And I get it, man. There are people listening to this podcast right now who are like, fam, my HR department is useless. So why would I go to them? They're not going to help me. I was like, well, hold on. Maybe it's because your case has not been made in the best possible, clear way. You got to speak their language. If you're going to roll into HR and be like, the bully makes me feel like my mom made me feel when she didn't hug me when I was little. And it's just a feeling of like, I know, mom, you don't love me. Like, okay, stop. They don't care. Like, they just don't care. They're so desensitized to these stories that like, you've just got to go with the brass tacks, the facts, and understand that HR folks are professional risk managers. They want to avoid risk. So if you're bringing a story in a case to them that's going to show risk to the organization, that's a different story. And the way that you do this is get very creative. So you got to think about turnover numbers. How many people have left your department based on the amount of people that this person bullied? And turnover is expensive. It costs a lot of money. And there's an actual formula for this. If you take the person's yearly salary, multiply it by 1.5, that is the cost in turnover related expenses based on the loss of that employee. If you have 2, 3, 4 of them in a year, that is a number that you can present as the cost that is affecting this particular department. There's so many different things about this, but when you document your stuff, be very clear. Names, who were there, who saw it, when did it happen, what was said, and if the bully is dumb enough, and believe it or not, this happens, to leave you a voice note or to text you or to email,
emails. Yeah.
There's
probably a bazillion of those. Yeah.
Right. Keep all of those so you can have a pattern. So those are the 3 main steps to be able to navigate workplace bullying.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I would add to that, just from my days, depending on where that person sits in the organization, if they're, for example, a teammate, my suggestion, don't take it to HR first. You got to take it to your leader because HR is just to the leader.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
And so having, which can feel tough sometimes depending on what your relationship is, but that business as a leader, as a business owner, that business case is actually even more powerful for me than even the HR person if I put myself back into my shoes, because I'm the one that's being judged based on sales, bottom line, right? Results. And if you can prove to me like the team is not operating properly, we're losing sales, we're, not working with our partners properly, et cetera, then I'm going to be the one that's kind of going to address it and do something for sure.
I agree. And also say too, it's like most of the people who hit me up, it's usually the boss employee relationship.
Yeah. Well, then you can't bring it to the boss.
Yeah. But but no, to your point though, those are 2 different things. And when in my case, it was peer bullying as well. So like the idea is like, take it to the boss first. And then of course, if they are just like, whatever, kick rocks, then you got to make a different decision. Yeah. But oftentimes it's the fear of the authority figure being the one who does it to you. And you're like, I don't know how to navigate this. And that's when it gets really tricky.
Hey guys, Erin here. Stop. Do not do it. Don't fast forward. I have something too important. I have a couple of very passive aggressive questions to ask you that you don't want to miss. Here they are. 1, do you find yourself often comparing yourself to others? Like, they work harder than me. They get noticed more than me. They have better luck than me. They're smarter than me. Or do you also just feel exhausted from having to always work as hard, if not harder,
than everybody else to stand out and succeed. Like, I know you have these challenges. We all do. And this is why I wrote the 50% rule. And I know you need to read another book, like you need a hole in the head. But I'm telling you, this book and this rule, I'm obsessed with it. And it has changed my life. It has changed the lives of others around us. And it has also been the formula for success behind so many successful people. Savannah Bananas, Hamilton, Weird Al Yankovic. The 50% rule is the simplest shortcut to stop comparing, stop copying, stop chasing other people, and like literally compete in your league of your own. There isn't a day that doesn't go by where I stop myself and I'm like, oh, she did a talk that I wish I could do. She's got more. No, it doesn't matter because we don't compete in the same league. I compete in a league of my own because I am constantly 50% ruling things. So if you're interested in this concept, which by the way is more fun as a team sport, but at least start with yourself. You cannot miss this book. It's not only powerful, it's really freaking fun to read. That is always my number one goal. It was my number one goal with my first book. It's my number one goal with the 50% rule. I want to make it enjoyable to read it. Why? So that you read it. So if you feel like you are stuck with these comparison cramps or just all the symptoms that I talk about in the book of sleep running syndrome, self-doubt gout, and pioneer paralysis, and well, you have to read the book to find out more, then just go buy the darn book. Easiest way, go to Amazon, search the 50% rule, and I cannot wait to hear how you 50% rule things. Here's a big question. Can we change people? Is there a step before this, or do you say don't even bother? Or you say, I've got some strategies that's going to help this person see what an a-hole, and I know there's repeated patterns, so like that they are, and I'm going to win, like, because we want to win beyond just getting somebody fired, but like we want to win the battle, even if it's in the moment, and eventually we want to try to get them moved out of the organization. Is it possible in your experience? Like, have you seen strategies, techniques, or no?
Well, I'll answer two ways. So one is, can people change? Absolutely. 100%. Can we make them change? No. So it's like, there are two different things. And part of the reason why is like, gosh, if they could only see the light, if they could only, there's a saying that I love, and it's like, honeybees don't waste a moment of their time trying to convince houseflies that honey tastes better than shit.
That's so good.
Right? So I can't, if I'm like, no, try this honey, it's so much better. Nah, fam, this pile over here in the grass is way better. Like, no, try the honey, it's so much better. I can't do anything for that person. I'm like, listen, all I can tell you is that this kindness stuff works way better than this bullying stuff that you're doing, but have at it. So I can't get them to change. What I can do are two things. One, I can, act by example, show people like, hey, this is how I choose to be by treating people with respect or kindness or whatever. But when that doesn't work, that goes back to our earlier conversation around, hey, well, if I can't get the person to change and they're not willing to change, then you have to create a situation that almost makes it so uncomfortable for them to stay in the same situation because now there's a cost. So if you're yelling at people, cursing at them, slamming your fist on the table, and you bring this up to HR and they're like, look, there's a pattern of this. 3 of your employees have said this. If I hear about this again, Jill, you're going to be fired. Then guess what? That will get her to change or not. And
or not.
If it doesn't, then she has real consequences that she has to deal with. But the whole point is it's worth trying. So if you can't get the person to change by your example, then you have to do it by force, for lack of a better way of putting it, by putting the pressure on them to change, or else they have some real consequences if they don't.
Got it. There's obviously a very cliche statement, kill them with kindness. What's the Shola Richards, 2026 modern view of kill them with kindness?
My modern view is to get a sword, name it kindness, and then stab them with it. No, that was a joke. Don't
torture them with kindness?
I torture them and stab them repeatedly kindness until they finally get it or stop breathing. No, jokes aside, here's the thing. Killing them with kindness is a very thoughtful idea, and I don't hate it. I think it's a little different in 2026, especially in the times that we're living in now. So you will get my kindness always, regardless of who you are as a human being, except for a few very key situations. If you are unable first of all, the obvious one, if my safety is at risk and you're coming to actually physically harm me, then I'm like, kind sir, please don't hit me with that baseball. No, come on. Like, but more realistically, if someone does not see my humanity, if someone is refusing to see me as a person, a full-blooded person, human, and you decide to treat me in either a racist, dehumanizing way, then it's no longer about kindness. In fact, if I were to try to offer kindness to this person to touch their heart and do this consistently, and they still don't see me as a human, that's not kindness, that's self-harm. And we have to be able to see the difference. A lot of people in my speaking events, I get this all the time. But Shola, what if someone is so deeply hateful and so locked in their homophobic, hateful way? This is one particular question I remember.
Mm.
And just so deeply homophobic. But, if I don't keep reaching out to them, then I'll never touch their hearts and they'll never change. But every time I talk to this person, just demeans me and say I'm going to hell and that I've been judged by God and this, that, and the other. And I try to touch their hearts, but they don't change. What should I do? I'm like, I don't know. I got a pretty easy answer for that. Love them from a distance. I mean, it seems so simple, but it's not. So many people put themselves in harm's way, and it's really unfortunate, but they don't see their humanity. And if they don't see it, what are you actually working with? The
Yeah.
kindness that you're giving to someone else has to start being redirected to yourselves. And I think in these times where if your view is like, hey, I don't see trans people as human, or I see people with even crazy stuff, like someone who might have like mental health challenges, like these people are sick in the head and they're possessed by a demon and we got to stay away from them. Like these beliefs that aren't based in any foundational sense of reality are not helpful. And if we try to be kind, we don't have to be mean and with bitterness and with hate. That's their burden. But what we should be doing is after multiple attempts, because I don't think you should do it more than once, multiple attempts to have a normal, kind, thoughtful conversation. If they're still coming with hate speak, we got to separate ourselves. What I've found in this work, I've been doing this for a minute, is that the people who are worthy of our kindness will meet us somewhere in the middle. They don't have to agree on everything. In fact, it's fine if we don't agree. However, there's still my humanity is not going to be in question. I had a situation back in college where I overheard some guy saying, not to me, but within earshot, that all Black people are basically monkeys. Now, that's dehumanizing. Yes, can we agree? So should I pull him aside like, kind sir, clearly you see that I'm a human, right? No, that's self-harm. I don't need to find a way to convince people. I'm not in the convincing business. I know it sounds so weird. Well, you want to get more kind people, right? I do. But here's how you do it. If there's I'm going to make this a math equation since you're a math major. So 20% of people, no matter what, are just so kind, so sweet, so loving that no matter who you are, they're like, God, you're the best person ever. And they're wonderful. On the other 20%, there is a group of folks who are so deeply hateful, they cannot be touched, and they're so closed-minded that there's nothing that can be done to change them. That leaves us mathematically with 60% of people in the middle who are kind of undecided. We're like, hey, I can go either way. If you focus my energy, that's what I do, on that 60%, knowing I already have 20% who are locked in, ride or die with me, that's 80% that possibly can be used to create a kinder world. That 20%, someone else can deal with those house flies. I'm not about them. I'm about those honeybees that are willing to do the hard work of kindness and caring about someone who doesn't look like them, love like them, or pray like them. That's the work. And it's so much easier to do it that way than trying to convince someone who's so close-minded to try to come to the table when they're not interested in having a seat.
Yeah. So if I'm one of those 60%, whether it's in the workplace or in my home life or in this political life that we're all sort of in more than we used to be in, and they say, okay, I want to be kinder. I want to be known as somebody that's kind. I want it to be top of mind. I want to be conscious. I want to add it into this world that feels very unkind. What are some little hacks, little steps? I know that sounds silly, but right, we operate, on a treadmill. What can I do to stop operating on that treadmill? What are some little things I can do to be more kind?
There's so many things. So, I mean, I could spend the rest of the episode talking about this. So I'll do my best to keep it tight. a few things that you could do that front of mind that is some off the beaten path stuff. So it's
Yeah.
not like, smile more, hold the door open. Like we got that stuff covered. So I'll go a little bit off the beaten path. One thing that you could do is to, speaking to the queen of authenticity here, but I'm going to say it anyway,
Mm.
have that authentic conversation that you've been putting off for a while. Every single person has a conversation that they've been putting off for whatever reason. And the kind thing to do is to have that conversation with authenticity, with kindness, and with, quite frankly, being direct. And I think that's I think it's in Brene Brown that says clear is kind or something to that extent.
Yep.
So like it's really what that is. So if you're having a situation with someone where you've been avoiding it for a while, one of the kindest things you can do is to sit down and have that conversation, because you're not being kind if something that needs to be said or something that needs to be done isn't being said or isn't being done because of what we're feeling inside and making it about us. So the kind thing we need to do is sit down and have that conversation. That's one thing you could do. Second thing I kind of alluded to in the earlier question is looking at your network. This is a tough thing. I read this somewhere. I wrote about it in Civil Unity, my most recent book. So I'm trying to remember the percentage exactly, but it was high enough that it caused me alarm. And it is something like 40% of Americans, I think 40% of Americans, excuse me, let me be more specific. 40% of white Americans do not have one friend of color. Yeah, think about that. 40%. Now, let's talk about what a friend is, right? So a friend is someone who, you like and respect. And it's not like someone you were going to like see like, oh, my kid plays on the same sports team as your kid. So we sit in the stands together rooting our kids. No. A friend is someone would you go on vacation with this person? Would you invite them to your wedding? Would you invite them to your house? Like, that's like, and would you have repeated conversations with this person? Do you really connect outside of your forced shared responsibilities of rooting on your kid or sharing a cubicle wall with someone? And so my challenge, being kind person here, is talking about, can you extend your network? Can you find a way to talk to someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't pray like you? It's hard, man. Or doesn't love like you. So for a lot of folks, that's hard because you step outside of your comfort zone, but that's the whole point of kindness, right? If you're only doing kind things for people who look like you, who vote like you, who pray like you do, or love like you do, then I would argue that you're not really kind at all. You're just kind of doing this performative thing, because it should not be something that only affects you personally for you to give a damn about it. And that's the second thing that I would challenge people to do, is extend their network. And I'll give you even a fun practical one. I talk about this often and I love it because it's just kind of fun. It's this term gossip, which word I made up.
I love that word. Yes, we use that.
Great, right? Because it's so cool. So for those who are not familiar, so gossip stands for, it's a word that combines kind and gossip and putting them together. And the reason why gossip is so cool, first of all, unlike its less evolved counterpart, which is gossip, where you're just talking sugar, honey, iced tea about people all day. That's shit. That's an acronym. Sorry. I can't say sugar, honey, iced tea when I'm actually, on stage. But the idea is, when you're talking junk about people behind their back, the key thing is that it usually gets back to them in one way or another, and it's not good. Gossip is very, very different. You're actually saying kind things about people behind their back, which is so powerful. For example, like, oh my God, so you're not in the room, Erin, pretend this. I'm talking to someone else, like, oh my God, Erin is so great. Whenever I see her on social media, specifically on LinkedIn, she's always so authentic and says the thing that most people are thinking about, but are just not willing to say. So like when I'm thinking about posting my own stuff on LinkedIn, I think about what Erin's doing. Like, man, if my girl Erin can do it, then I know that I can do it. I just love that energy about her, because there's so few people on LinkedIn who are coming with that level of authenticity, and she's a real one. Now, what's cool about this is that will somehow get back to you. And this is what's so powerful about this. When you hear that people are talking about you with kindness, when you're not in the room, when there's no benefit to you, because I'm not here to hear it, like, it has more of a powerful effect than a direct compliment does alone. And this is how you get to change cultures. When wow, people are, Susan in accounting actually thinks I'm good at what I do. That's kind of nice. I've never heard Susan say something about me like that before. And it creates a stronger bond within the relationship. And then you also start looking to do kind things for others and saying kind things about others too, because you felt how good it feels to be the recipient of that. So there's so many things, Erin, but those are just 3 off the top of my head. There's just the key thing, though, is you just want to summarize this kind of stuff. If you commit to leaving every single thing you touch and every one you touch just a little bit better than you found it, you've made the world a better place through your kindness.
Yeah, and I will say you're infectious because I don't think I've ever been, a consistent asshole. Of course, I've definitely had my moments,
We've all
but
been there.
I think since meeting you and knowing your message, I can think of numerous times where without you saying tactical, tangible. So I asked you for those, but just having it in the back of my head, like when you're talking about this, I'm like, oh, it's like the time I had lunch with Jenna George, who's a speaking bureau agent, and I gossiped about three other speakers without her
Oh,
asking, or I've texted other agents and said, oh, you've got to check this person out, or I think of and it all comes back to you. I think about being in the grocery store like a month ago and this super cute old gentleman who clearly does not do most of the grocery shopping and had his wife's list. And he came up to me. We were in like the milk aisle, so we're a couple aisles away, but he says to me, "Excuse me, do you know what string cheese is?" Like,
oh,
not where is string cheese. He didn't even.
know
And
what it
I said,
was.
"I do. It's mozzarella that you can, eat like bite size. Let me show you where it is." So we, walked over a couple aisles down the dairy aisle. And not only did I show it to him, but I said, "Look, there's the name brand, which I'm sure is fine." I said, "But I get the store brand because we eat it all the time and it's great, but it's up to you, And it's little moments like that. Slowing down. For me, I think a little bit of it is slowing down. Like I had an event last week. I actually spoke in the morning, afternoon, so it was a long day, but it was great,
Oh,
great
wow.
energy. And it was mostly college students. It was like matching up. College students came in to meet with portfolio companies from a local venture capital firm. Just great energy. And one of the kids, I say kid, he's graduated from Vanderbilt, but he's still young, doesn't have a driver's license. And, he had come talk to me and then he kind of went to his phone. He's like, "Oh gosh, I don't know." He said something about like when I'm going to get home. His parents had dropped him off and they were working. And I had a feeling he might have come from a home that wasn't, the easiest home, just,
Mm.
and from our conversation. And I said, "Where do you live?" He said, "West Haven." I said, "That's right on my way home. This is what we do." Because I was literally leaving that event in Connecticut, of course, to drive to the hockey rink to get my son, because this is what we do, us working moms. So um, I took him home because I can't imagine my son being at, an event and being stranded. Not just the time, but the look, of having to wait around and have people realize you didn't have a way to get home. Um, so I don't say that to like tout that I'm definitely not Brother Teresa like you are. Um, but just to give people and I really think for me, a lot of it's just slowing the frick down. Like I'm usually operating at such speed. And so I might have told him, "Oh, that string cheese is over in this aisle," or maybe told him to get an Uber because I wasn't quite sure, to be honest, if taking him home was going to make me late to get my son. But
Yep.
um, when you can slow down and have those conversations and do those little things. You get so much more out of it
Well,
than
can I
the other
ask you about
person.
that? Because I really,
Yeah.
there's a couple of things that I'm curious about, both the situation with the gentleman in the grocery store and giving the young man the ride home. How did you feel during that act? Both of those acts? Because if you think about it, sure, it doesn't take time to show the man where the string cheese is. It takes a little longer to give a person a ride home. But how did you feel? Like, there's two questions. Like, one,
Mhm.
like, what made you do it? Which I know you're a good person, so I'll put that aside. Well, how did you feel when you were doing that?
I think for me, I spent more time maybe than I had in the past thinking about what it would have been like to be them. Even
Mm,
the old man. Yeah, like it's very easy quickly to be like, "Oh, I've been in big stores. Like I don't usually go to don't hate me, but I don't usually go to Costco. I usually go to BJ's. So if I'm in a Costco, I'm like frazzled and um stressed out because I don't know where anything is. Where my local one, I literally could win guys' grocery games in that store. Like nobody can beat me. I know where every freaking thing is in that every aisle. Um, and I think the same thing. I think it was empathy. It was a deeper. I mean, like you said it without saying it. You're an empath. You feel things deeply, not just for yourself, but for the homeless, for others. Like it's
mhm.
not something. It's almost clinical, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think I just sort of turned the dial. I think I've always cared about people. I think it's just a dial. And getting closer to instead of thinking, "Okay, am I gonna make it?" how far is that out of my way, whatever. I thought more about, oh my God, I can't even imagine me or my son or my daughter or whatever stranded here. And it sort of wiped away all those other thoughts I might have normally had, which, might have prevented me from making that offer. So
But that's why but it's so powerful though, right? So this goes back to when I think about kindness, it's like, are you able to see yourself in someone else? Are you able to see their pain as your pain?
yeah.
I mean, look, there's so much science behind this. So when you do a kind act for someone, let's go back to the gentleman in the grocery store for a second. So he doesn't know what string cheese is and he comes to you. Now, if you think about it, there is an inherent risk in this gentleman asking you, right? You can look at him like you're crazy. Who on earth doesn't know what
Oh, are
string
you 70 some years old and
Yeah,
not?
right? So this man, like, he had a risk and he was vulnerably asking you. And also, you gave off some sort of vibe that made him feel like you were a safe person to ask. So that's a really powerful thing, right? You're putting that aside. So he asked you and then you helped him. So there's science behind this. So when you commit a kind act like you did in the grocery store and with a gentleman who needed a ride home, something happens in your body. So the neurotransmitter is serotonin, which is different from dopamine, right? So dopamine is like, "Let go." And serotonin is kind of also makes you feel good, but it's a different type of good. It's like, you're safe. You're in a good place. All is going to be okay. So that feeling of serotonin that you get, that neurotransmitter hits. So you feel this powerful feeling when you do it. The person who receives it, the gentleman who got the string cheese from you after you showed him where it was, also feels it. But here's what's crazy. Anyone who observed that also gets a hit of serotonin as well. So you're literally creating this world through your actions that is making the world a little bit kinder than it was before. Because that one person, you see this happen all the time when you're like, or at least stories about it, right? In like Starbucks drive-through lines where someone pays for someone's coffee and the next person does it, and the next person does it, and just goes on for like however long. It's just that act of doing it. So when people tell me, oh my God, the world is a dumpster fire. Yeah, sure is. And guess what? We have to extinguish it. And the only way we can do it is by our small intentional actions. When we choose to do nothing, it's like going around all day thinking like, what's the point in showering? I'm only going to get dirty again. Yeah, you are. So you're going to stop showering?
Great analogy.
We show up consistently. I think this is how we can do it. Incrementally, consistently, over and over and over again is how we get to create this kind of world. We just need as many people as possible on board on this train.
Hey there, it's Erin. I'm just popping in real quick to ask you a question. Is there any chance you know someone who is looking for a keynote speaker for their upcoming event? Look, I know that many event organizers, they struggle to find a speaker who provides both tangible value and business knowledge, but that also lights their audience on fire. And I truly believe there aren't many speakers like me out there who are both former corporate executives and professionally trained speakers. And there's definitely none that roll in with an orange suitcase they unpack with their audience. Trust me on that. I would love nothing more than to bring my message of using authenticity as your strategic career and business advantage to people spinning in your universe, especially if you'd be there. I promise my talks always create an immediate buzz, but not just right after, but for months and years after the event is over. You can learn more about my message, style, and reviews, and share my speaking info by going to beauthenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. That's B, just the letter B, authenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. Or of course, we have it right in the show notes to make it easy for you too.
Let's take a step back a little bit and talk about Ubuntu. You mentioned it quickly, but you have Go Together and you have Go Together International. Go Together Global is your company. Tell us more about like how that can affect us, why you're so passionate about it. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, Ubuntu is such a beautiful word. And I think I've been searching for it all of my life and I didn't really realize it. Ubuntu is an African philosophy that means I am because we are. It's the height of human kindness, human connection, and human compassion. And it's like, in a sense, Erin, it's like there's no place where I end and you begin, you know? So it's like, so when you think about this level of connection, it's so, so powerful. If I were to harm you in some way, whether I'm like trolling your post on LinkedIn or like sabotaging you before you get on stage or something stupid. In a sense, I'm only harming myself, which is true. I mean, I'm a little woo woo, so forgive me, but like this universality of the world that we're currently inhabiting, we don't do this in a vacuum. My behaviors have this ripple effect on others, but
Yeah.
that's bad and also more importantly for good. So I notice that when I come in a place of service, when I come from a place of kindness, I'm able to look at Steve in accounting, who maybe I don't have a huge relationship with, but if I can be kind to Steve or support him, then maybe he'd be more likely to give that kindness to someone else in the future. It's this interconnectedness that this word has. And from a speaking perspective, this is what I think about often when I'm giving a talk. I'm like, how can I help a group of surgeons or a group of higher ed professionals or a group of middle school kids to understand this concept of how we show up for each other consistently? Not only just makes them feel better, but it creates a better world for all of us to live in, a better operating room, a better boardroom, better classroom. Like
Mhm.
it all comes down to the understanding that we don't do anything alone. And that's why my favorite quote is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that proverb, that's something that I just lean into consistently. I can't do anything alone. I mean, it's funny doing a podcast with actually a good friend because like we've talked about this before, Erin, and just like I know that I've been there and I've texted you when we've had some rough times. Well, I've had a rough time, you've had a rough time. We were able to be there for each other in that. And I think that's what it truly is, that spirit of Ubuntu. Like, I've
Yeah.
got your back. And also, how can I support you when you're not in the room, even though we're literally on opposite sides of the country right now? That's what friendship's about. But we don't have to be like good friends like the two of us. It could just be someone like a stranger or someone who you don't know very well. But if you can see their humanity, if you can see their humanity, then you're more likely to operate from the spirit of Ubuntu than you would otherwise.
I love it. And you do that so well. I mean, for our listeners, like he walks the walk.
That's
And I leave him either a voice text or a regular text. When you show up authentically, you show up with stories, with humor. You're not just like, oh, get over yourself, or that's, great. Like you truly care. And I think that is, like I said, I think all of these things, not just your posts on LinkedIn or what I know you talk about, but how you treat me, I think has given that halo effect to me. I felt it. I truly have. I really have.
Right.
And I'm very grateful for it.
Well, I received that. Thank you. And I could like just volley it back across the net at you if you don't mind. I mean, your authenticity, your kindness, your thoughtfulness. But Erin, you know this, right? We're both professional speakers. And how can I say this? You know, there's people who speak about one thing on stage and are a completely different person off it, right? And so I would think that is an incredibly exhausting way to live
Mhm.
because, in a sense, you are constantly trying to play this, I know, game, this act, it's a
Mhm.
performance
Yeah.
that is exhausting to do. So for me, it's like, I'm a goofball. I mean, dude, I take my work very seriously, like crazy seriously. I just don't take myself seriously at all. Like, I mean, I'm whatever. I'm a goofball and I'm going to have fun doing it. This kind of stuff, I'll ride or die on this. I'll give my life for this stuff. But I don't take myself seriously, you know? So I can do stuff in advance of the message where I can be the butt of the joke or where I'm not shown as someone who's this super serious person because it'll get someone to think about kindness more deeply. I do dumb stuff on stage. I make people laugh because I think that when you're able to see the person's full humanity, and that goes back to the whole spirit of Ubuntu stuff, it's easier to connect with people. I used to not be this guy, Aaron. I used to be the guy like, okay, let me make sure. Do I have, sir? So here we go. We're going to talk about this topic. No, I want some white papers for you to read. Read this in silence for the next 2 minutes and then talk to your partner about your takeaways. Then we'll reconvene. Like people are getting up and walking out. They're like, what is happening? I mean, and it was so funny because I was like, I thought to do this work, I had to be serious because
Yeah.
that's what happens. And you can be serious about your work without taking yourself seriously. And those are two very, very, very different things.
100%. Two questions left for you. Last one's a softball. This one's a little less, although I think it would be easy. We always ask people, what was your um, buck that moment? So a time when you bucked the norm and did something sort of against the grain, and good things happened as a result, though.
Oh my gosh. Story of my life. In fact, I would say if there's one theme in my life, it's zigging when everyone else is zagging. That's like literally my thing. So it's like, oh, all y'all are doing this? I'm out. Like, oh, you guys are doing this too? I'm out. I'll give you one example, which is kind of what we were just talking about. My speaking career. I decided that I was going to speak about kindness. And now, as you can imagine, Erin, a lot of people are like, really? Really? So, okay. So you're going to talk about things that we teach our kids in elementary school, like in kindergarten. You're going to talk to these big executives about kindness. I was like, yeah, I am. And they're like, good luck.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes for you. And I mean, here I am, still going. And I think what's interesting is that I saw a gap in the market that has not been completely closed yet. I'm hoping to do so. Is this, if you look on kindness content on any social media channel, like type in kindness, you will see the same thing. The person posting flowery quotes and memes about like, make sure to give love to yourself first. Kindness is free. Sprinkle that shit everywhere. Like you see these quotes over and over again.
Fluffy unicorn doo-doo, as I call
Yeah, man. And it's like,
Yeah.
and I'm just sitting here like, family. And thank you for it's better than the opposite. So I'm glad you're at least putting that out there. So to be clear, but still, the question that a lot of people are, how? How am I supposed to be kind when I just got a cancer diagnosis, or I just found out that my spouse is sleeping with the pool guy, or I got to figure out I'm $100,000 in debt because I didn't pay taxes over the past 3 years. How can I find a way to be kind in these situations? Because that's what I think is so important. It's the tactics. And that's what I want to fill, that need of like, all right, yes, we should be kind, but here's how. Here's what it looks like. Do X, Y, and Z. That's why I started the Kindness Extremist podcast. So I can give people clear ways to be able to do this. Because without that, it's just like this fluffy idea without any real thing that you can do tomorrow. Or scratch that. The second you're done listening to my episodes, you can be like, oh, I'm going to do this. I got it. And that's the gap I'm trying to fill here. So to answer your question, everyone's saying kindness is so easy. Everyone can do it. My way of bucking the trend is like, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to show them how to do it. And that's the big difference between me and I think other people who talk about kindness.
I love it. I love it. So before I ask the last question, tell them more about your podcast, Kindness Extremist Podcast, which I love. Free tips. It's Shola's voice. Do I have to say more? Like,
oh gosh.
First time I ever heard Shola speak, I think I texted and I was like, can you do a meditation app for me?
You're so funny.
And where they can connect with you and follow you.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for that. So yeah, the Kindness Extremist Podcast is my answer to bring balance to a deeply unbalanced world. And so people are busy. They got a lot of stuff going on. So it's a solo podcast. So it's just me. In every episode, I will give you 3 practical tips on how to make the world a kinder place. And I'll always do it in 30 minutes or less. And one thing that I would recommend for anyone who's hearing this right now is if you go to the episode list, you'll see that I do not shy away from hard stuff. So every episode is its own topic. It could be around workplace bullying. It could be around forgiving people who harmed you. It's also around things like maintaining your mental health in these really difficult world, how to maintain civility when dealing with people who are totally polar opposite from you, how to deal with difficult coworkers, how to deal with bigotry and racism. Like literally anything that you can think of, it's in that episode list. So go check it out. And you can check with me, go to my website, just sholarichards.com. And if you're down to subscribe to my Monday morning emails where I give you hard-hitting kindness content every Monday, find me on Substack. You can subscribe very easily. And that's the easiest way to stay a hold of me and keep in touch and keep the message going.
They're all coming. They're all coming your way, I'm sure. All right, last question. What's your one last tip to make work suck less for people?
That's funny. That's a softball, Erin. Good Lord. I get like, that's a whole episode. To make work suck less, this goes to any leader who's hearing this.
Yeah.
Start holding people accountable for bad behavior that's harming people. Please just start holding people accountable. When it's inconvenient, when the person is a star performer, air quotes, I would argue that the person isn't a star performer if they're abusing people, but that's another episode for a different day. Start holding people accountable for harmful behavior. You want to make the workplace a better place? That is the one rare thing. That's the road less traveled that folks aren't taking. So I challenge them to start there.
Hey, it's Erin with a teeny request. If you have ever gotten any value from this podcast and you'd like us to stick around, plus you want it to continue to grow so we can kind of swindle bigger and more knowledgeable guests to join us and to keep providing you with tangible and inspiring actions you can take to achieve the career and life you deserve, could you please just take 1 minute to leave us a rating and a review? Those reviews go a long way in attracting guests to the show, and candidly, they really make Nicole and I's day. And we see you. We really do. So when you have the time and inspiration, we'd love to see a rating and review from you. Thank you.